The CPI report. Vocal, Victims of Child Abuse Laws. The program is aired on Mediacom Channel 15 every Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock, and then it's repeated again on Wednesday evening at 9:30. You can email us at vocaliowa@mchsi.com. We take telephone calls from parents to give them tips from our experience. We're not lawyers. My number is 276-3956, and John's number is 282-2672. My name is Don Burgmaier, and with me at the controls is my co-host,
John Harvey, and welcome to the CPI report. CPI stands for Child Protection in Iowa, and those are the issues we try to stick by, although we do look at some collateral issues. And we consider the court as being both a partner and sometimes a problem. So we also look into court affairs as well. And Terrance Walker is here to give us some update on some of the court actions, not only in Iowa but around the nation, that bear very heavily upon the survival of the family. Well, we know that our court system is out of bounds. We know that there are some very horrific problems, and if your court system doesn't fit with the legislative branch and with the executive branch of government, they could be a part of a growing tyranny in our nation. We've seen some rather strange things happening in courts, particularly in the juvenile court, and that's in the area in which we work the most. And I think that it's not getting any better. We have to look real hard to find things that are encouraging in today's juvenile court. One of the things that I ran across a news article that's about 2 years old, and it says, Iowa likes to be number one in everything. Well, this news article says Iowa is number one, but we shouldn't really brag about it. Iowa steals more kids and puts more foster kids per capita than any other state. Well, Iowa found out that there's some tricks to the trade, and there are ways that you can make loads and loads of money by stealing children and putting them into the foster care system. This is not to say that everything in foster care is wrong or bad. It's probably got a one element about it, which is absolutely necessary.
Yeah, but I think if you interviewed the children, they'll say it's nothing like home. They'd rather be home. Why would they be jerked out of a place where they're familiar with?
Okay.
So that the system can make a profit.
You're absolutely right. There's nothing that beats having a mother and a father, and there's been too many pieces of case law, too many conferences and so forth. Even our former Governor Branstad held a conference, a lengthy conference at Drake University, and I videotaped the whole thing and found out that the conclusion was that children are better off at home with a mom and a dad. Well, isn't that a grand design? And any tinkering with that design means that you may encounter some other problems. And foster care is one of those problems. We're going to be talking the latter half of this program about foster care and about a program that's called Elevate. I was rather impressed with some of the young people that showed up at Elevate, and you saw some of them actually in court, didn't you, Don?
Well, it was in the courthouse. It wasn't in front of a judge, but in courtroom.
Okay, and I noticed in a presentation that I videotaped on a program called Elevate. Elevate was first of all started on a small one-time grant through Children and Family Services of Iowa, and it was such a popular thing that the teenagers began taking over. That is, the ones who have come out of the foster care system. And I was so impressed with the individuals that I saw making this presentation, and other and parents who are out to adopt children are impressed by these kids that have come through the foster care system. Some of them go up as high as 20 years old, I think, that work in something called Elevate. By the way, the former foster care children named the program Elevate. That's their input to this whole thing. And they made a DVD, and they were so successful about that they turned around and made another DVD, and they're thinking about creating another DVD, informational, and sending them all to people like the Finance Committee of the United States Congress and things of that sort. The reason why I was rather impressed with this program is that it's self-sustaining. In other words, they're not going out and relying solely on tax dollars. They go out and raise funds to do what they need to do, and they get some corporate funding and so on and so forth. One thing, as I noticed as I went through this presentation, that there are some things that the children, the foster kids, mention quite often. They don't like to have their siblings parted. Of course, they don't like to be taken out of their home, and in their familiar surroundings. Children are left in the dark, and they seldom ever have any direct voice in court. Sometimes foster parents will share with them what went on in court or what's going to go on in court, but seldom ever do they have any part in that. And here's something that we know is true. Children do not see their guardian ad litem. Now, the guardian ad litem is supposed to be the one character in the whole judicial system that is supposed to protect them from any kind of legal harm. Well, if they never see the child, never see their client, don't even know who their client is, never even drive by, never give them a phone call, how in the world is the guardian ad litem supposed to do their job? I don't know.
Just by reading the paperwork that DHS gives them.
Yeah, right. So
isn't that a conflict of interest?
It would seem as though they're conflicted. At least they have no firsthand knowledge, and it seems like to me it would be up to the guardian ad litem to develop a firsthand report, so that when they testify in court, they're not testifying based upon what they read someone else writing. They're testifying based upon what they know about the case. And there is no real family, and that's particularly sorrowful at holiday times.
So they're actually relying on secondhand information to tell the judge what to do, aren't they?
Correct.
So they got the DHS to tell them, what do they need the guardian ad litem for?
Right, right. So, and there is no support at the time of aging out. They're trying to get into legislative funds to help this. And in fact, I think they've passed a bill that permits their assistants to go through age 21, so they aren't completely out. A kid that ages out of the system at age 18 has no medical care insurance, has no real job skills, and so they're out pretty much on their own. And aging out is not a real good thing.
And all
here.
they know is to be dependent on DHS, and then they're kicked out.
Correct. And when that's cut off, that's bad. A lot of them are managing somehow to amass enough grants to get themselves into college. And the foster care children that are young adults that presented a program before the um, DHS council recently were graduates. Some of them were college graduates. There's been an amazing change also in the attitude of those who are looking for children to adopt to consider adopting older children, simply because the children that they saw in these various presentations were pretty charming outputs or outcomes of the foster care system. I think they may be exceptions, but I wouldn't say that would be a rule. Well, we're going to turn to Terrance Walker. I don't know if he's talked to our newly installed Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, but he's done some digging into various cases, and so we're going to turn the camera over onto Terrance Walker. Terrance.
Well, appreciate it, John. It's funny that you say that. No, I haven't got a chance to talk to her, the new chief.
She
justice.
hasn't asked for you?
Well, she wasn't there. Remember, we went to see the
Right.
meet all the judges for the meeting they had about a year ago.
Uh-huh.
She was at a soccer game, so oh well.
Oh, really? Interesting.
So
Bring your mic up a little
It's,
closer.
I
Ken.
thought you were
can't-
going to
can't hear me? Okay. So hopefully we'll get to interview one or two of the judges. I did get a positive response from a couple of them. One in particular, can't remember the judge's name.
Mahon, was it?
Oh, which one was it? It was the guy that's a member of the Supreme Court.
Okay.
He did tell me to call him, and hopefully we'll have an interview one day. I've been so inundated with work, I haven't had time to shore that up, but we'll definitely do that soon. But I thought it was interesting that we've got the High Court Chief, in relation to what you was talking about in foster care. She made a comment today in the, I guess it was yesterday, in the State of the Judiciary speech, as her first speech in which she is presiding in the Iowa Supreme Court Chief Justice. According to the Des Moines Register, she states from the legislator, to the legislature, that whatever we can do to help children, and she's talking about the foster children here in Iowa, will benefit not only these innocent kids, but also the public in general, because we can reduce the odds that neglected children become delinquent juveniles and adult criminals. Apparently we've got about 5,000 children that live in foster care in Iowa, and the court system has already made a little bit of changes. She's proposing that the judges that they implement a one judge, one child policy in which the same judge handles one child's case from beginning to end. That's one, I guess, good recommendation. And then she's also asked that the hourly rate for court-appointed attorneys who handle juvenile cases be increased. And I tell you, it was just...
I'd recommend that their responsibilities be increased as the pay goes up.
Yeah, I would second that motion. I guess the one thing I find troubling, I mean, we're throwing enough money into the whole foster care thing, and trying to get kids into foster care. I myself has been a victim of the DHS don't tell a parent policy. Don't tell the absent parent what's going on. I guess that's what they do to fathers or absent parents or parents that, even though they have joint custody, they don't tell them what's going on if a child's taken and put in temporary foster care. I've been a victim of that unspoken, unwritten, but for sure policy by the DHS. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people that have been victims of that. But hey, that's probably that's what we really need to be getting to the root of if we're going to stem what's going on with the huge amount of kids that's going into foster care here in Iowa. We need to try to figure out a better way to get kids to their other parents or to the another relative or loved one. Because I think that being number one in per capita and placing kids in foster care, I think that's a horrendous stat. But that says a lot about the current state of affairs here in Iowa. Did you have a comment on that, John? I know you was looking like you had something to say about that.
Well, yeah, I saw that in an article that we came across, and I was going to present it, but then I looked at the date, and I'm not sure we want to present news that is 2 years old.
Yeah.
But it simply occurred to me that Iowa's always wanting to be the first they want to be the first in everything. And here we find that they're first in a category that I don't think we should brag about, that we've stolen more kids. And it was out of a theft of a kid like this in Massachusetts that our current DHS director was involved. They stole 2 little girls from a mother out there, and a former foster care worker for the DHS in Massachusetts didn't like the attitude of the 6-year-old. Took 42 feet of duct tape and bound that girl up so she wouldn't make quite so much noise. Put her in the basement so she wouldn't bother the foster parent. You see, those 2 little children should never have been in foster care. Now, the person who was in charge, who was actually the custodian of those children, was Kevin Concannon. And for some reason, our state legislature decided to hire him and put him in place as the chief executive custodial parent of all of these foster kids in Iowa. An awesome, awesome job. I notice, however, now the tendency when there is a removal to at least make an attempt to find people that are blood relatives. That's what they're supposed to do. And not only, that doesn't always occur in accordance with federal regulations. So I'm not very pleased about what I've seen done in foster care, and I would applaud anything that the Chief Justice, Chief of the Iowa Supreme Court, has in mind, although I haven't read the entire address that was given on the 10th day of January.
Yeah. Did you say he was from Massachusetts, or was it Maine?
I'm not really sure. I thought it was Massachusetts, but it could have been Maine.
And Iowa must have offered him more pay to get him up here, or down here, over here.
I'm not sure they wanted him there anymore. So
Massachusetts.
I don't think the pay was the issue.
Oh,
I think the job was the issue.
He was just available, huh?
Yeah, you bet.
Somebody thought he could do a good job. Bring in federal money. That was what he was good for.
Good, right.
Terrance. Well, one other story here. One interesting story from California from January 8th from law.com. One judge, Judge Peter Sires of the Superior Court of San Joaquin County, he wanted to dismiss one of defendant's prior convictions, which had been a strike in California's 3 strikes scheme, in order to obtain a sentence of just 6 years as a part of a plea bargain. And even though such dismissals have been disapproved by the appellate courts, which generally prohibit a plea bargain dismissal in serious felony cases. When the prosecutor said that to the Judge Sayers responded, "Oh, that's right. You can't offend the kangaroos up there in kangaroo court," talking about the people in the Supreme Court.
Sure.
Well, that had some repercussions when the judge, I guess when the appeal got heard, the defendant's attorney for the appeal submitted what's called Anders brief, which is basically stating, I don't think there's anything that I can argue in this case that's going to justify reversing this defendant's conviction. And they just state the record. They state some facts and state some stuff that might, for the most part, might help him out. Well, lo and behold, one of the Supreme Court justices looked at this record and seen this comment and was so offended that they not only said that Judge Sayers violated Canon 1 of the Code of Judicial Ethics by making that comment, and Canon 1 provides that a judge shall uphold the integrity and independence of the judiciary, and they put it in a published opinion, which is basically, which will serve as a warning for other judges that may say similar things, and may basically serve as grounds for a judicial conduct ethics complaint and a finding of a violation by the Judicial Qualifications Commission out there. But the other interesting thing that I find that is more troubling is that these Anders briefs are submitted all the time by appellate court attorneys for defendants, just so they can just, get rid of the case and not have to set forth a lot of legal arguments, not spend a whole lot of time. They can just go ahead and get, their money for representing the client, which is if they're poor, they get state a state court appointment, basically, of an attorney. Well, in this case, the guy submitted this Anders brief, as it's called in in the legal profession, and when he submitted this, most of the time, I'd say about 99% of the time, somebody submits one of these Anders brief, the court looks maybe, just briefly at the record and, agrees with the attorney and says, okay, there's nothing to reverse this appeal for the defendant. Well, because the court had basically seen this comment in there, they dug into the case. They found about not just one major issue, but 8 major issues which could serve as a ground for reversing this guy's conviction and sentence. So the lesson to the story is that if you're a trial court judge, you should be hesitant to say the term kangaroo court in terms of in way to describe your appellate superiors. But another reading, I guess, of the whole incident is that you may not win your appeal unless the judge messes up and says something against the Court of Appeals. So, I mean, that's my whole 2 cents on that. Well, you got any comments, John or Don?
We had one case that came back from the Court of Appeals in which one of the participants, one of the judges, said, "I'll defer to the wisdom of the lower court." Well, if all of them deferred, then we wouldn't need a Court of Appeals, right?
Yeah.
So this one person said, "Oh, I'll defer to the wisdom of the lower court," which I thought was a chicken way out of having to think or having to read. The dissenting opinion, though, was beautiful. And I think that we can gather a lot of thought, and at least it gave me the feeling that the person who wrote the dissenting opinion must have read some things
Yeah.
and must have exercised some of those neurons in her brain that the other participants on the Court of Appeals failed to do. And I'm kind of wondering if they don't turn a lot of this stuff over to the law clerks to decide for them anyhow, so they don't have to bother to think. I hope I'm dead wrong on that evaluation, Terrance.
Well, I don't think you're too far off. I mean, it's very well known and talked about in the whole legal profession, and I know a lot of lawyers. I know a lot of people in the profession, and not only that, but I read a lot from lawyers. It's written by lawyers and people in the legal profession, and it's pretty well publicized, even though they don't mention any specific names a lot of times, that that does go on. You might have judges discuss a case, they look at something, they might look at some paperwork, but when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of everything, who's writing the opinions, a lot of times it's the legal clerks, and a lot of times it's even them who do the initial voting. And sometimes that's even proper procedure. They go by and they write a little synopsis on a specific case, and they give it to the judge, and the judge, a lot of times, if they're busy and they're handling 2,000 cases a year like the Iowa Supreme Court does,
Right.
I don't think that you can honestly say that all those judges read all those opinions and read all the cases and briefs set before them.
Correct.
And I think we'd be fooling ourselves if we were to say that they did.
Right.
So, I guess it's, not only has it been published, but I mean, common sense would dictate that the legal clerks, for the most part, law school students are doing the work for the Iowa Supreme Court.
Right.
And the rest of the judges.
Okay. Well, thank you for that
I got a
report,
comment
Don.
on based on that. A couple of years ago, I had a. What's the trouble, John?
Let's move on.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Okay. We're going to turn now to a DVD produced by the foster care people in a program called Elevate. The person you're going to be hearing from first on this DVD is Jerry Foxhoven. He's taken a real career, developed a real career in working closely to kids who are in foster care. In my opinion, when I look at some of these things, I come to the conclusion that the very best foster care is no foster care. In other words, let's see if we can't get to the point where we can do without a massive foster care system. It is a very costly system. It is very devastating to people to have their kids locked up in what I call foster jail. And the chances that a child will be harmed in out-of-home placement are enormously greater. I think it's something like 8.2 times greater than if they are in their own homes. Let's see if we can't get children appropriately placed in or left in their own homes and such services that are needed to assist the family to do what that family should. Let's now go to the DVD, and let's see if we can get it up and running. Okay, come on.
Practiced law for 23 years. Some time ago, took a 6-year hiatus being director of the CASA program and the Foster Care Review Board program.
This is Jerry
Being director of the
Foxhoven.
Children's Rights Center at Drake and supervising law students in juvenile court is to start really developing best practices so that when law students get out of school, they see it as their role to empower the children that they represent, the teens that they represent. And also to kind of start raising the bar for the quality of representation, even for those lawyers that have been practicing for a long time. I think there are a lot of issues, but one of them that at least that I focus on in what I do is that sometimes they feel like everybody else has a voice in what's happening in my life except me. That so often either their attorneys don't come and see them, don't talk to them, or they don't feel like they're welcome in court, that they don't have a role to play in developing their future, that judges, lawyers, social workers, everybody else decides what's going to happen in my future, but I don't get a voice in that either. And I think that's the biggest issue. I think sometimes judges and lawyers together don't think of young kids who are involved in court like anybody else that's involved in court, you know. As I say to young lawyers or even older lawyers, I say you wouldn't represent somebody in a car accident case, a juvenile, a criminal case, or any other kind of case and not meet them until the day of the hearing, right outside the courtroom. We need to educate the teens as to what their rights are, that they have a right to go to court if they want to go to court, they have a right to be heard, they have a right to have a lawyer that represents them fully, just like anybody else involved in the legal system. And I think that we really need to do a better job of making sure that teens who are involved in the juvenile court system have a clear understanding of what their rights are. The thing I think that causes the biggest problem is just that it's unknown. It's a foreign thing to them. They don't know what's going on. They don't know the rules. They don't know, you know, do they really want to hear what I have to say? And these are powerful people, well-educated people. They speak a language maybe I don't understand. And so I think the unknown is the biggest barrier that they have. And I think we can help them overcome that, you know, both by educating them, but also by educating the people who represent them to make sure that before hearings, they tell them what to expect, what's going to happen. If people use large legal terms or complicated legal phrases, that they translate for them, just like you would for any adult who also wouldn't understand those types of things. And then after hearings are over with, to explain what happened, so that they have a real clear understanding about what happened and where we go from here. I think sometimes we forget to really include young people in the planning of their own case. So we don't even recognize sometimes what is really important to them. Success for one young person could look very different than success for another. For some it may be adoption, for some it may be return home, some may be just living till they're age 20, you know. But I think the big common denominator is success means having some connection with some adult, some permanent connection or significant connection with some adult. And an attorney has an opportunity to really make a difference in someone's life that will change their whole life forever. And I think it's the most fulfilling thing you can do in the practice of law, frankly.
My name is Connie Cohen, and I'm Associate Juvenile Judge of the 5th Judicial District of Iowa. My jurisdiction includes dependency cases, including termination of parental rights, delinquency cases, and mental health and substance abuse commitments, and adoption, and parental notification cases where pregnant minors seek an abortion without notifying parents. I see my role as a juvenile court judge as being one that demands leadership from the bench to set expectations where I'm comfortable that the families are getting the very best opportunity to reunify, always balancing that child's need for timely permanency. The juvenile court judge has to ask questions, has to be out there, put the robe on so that everyone knows this is serious business. We need to have proceedings where everyone feels safe and is treated with respect and dignity and can come to court and be heard. And it's only by providing the oversight that the federal and state laws expect of judges that we are going to get the outcomes in a timely manner that we need. We also need to get out there as judges and advocates, to the extent that our ethics allow us, and tell the community, teach our community, what is lacking, so that we can garner the services that help children and families succeed. The children whose parental rights have been terminated, the children who are placed in the guardianship of the Commissioner of the Department of Human Services, we are their parents. The state is their parent. And we owe to them a special responsibility. But we are not always able to fulfill it. And that is probably the most disheartening thing about this work, to see a child age out of the system with no family. One of the most heart-wrenching things I have ever heard as a judge was a child who came back to see me after aging out, and she was about 20. And she came to me and she said, "I want you to know that I'm getting married." She said, "But Judge Cohen, the real reason I came to see you today was because I was hoping that you would perform my marriage ceremony. And the reason that I'm asking you to do it is because I have to have a judge marry me. Because after my parents' rights were terminated, every night before I fell asleep, I prayed to God that he would send me a family to adopt me, and he never did. So I don't believe in God, and I need a judge to marry me." We didn't get to choose the time in her life when she walked in the door, which was after years and years of abuse. Her younger siblings fared much better in the system and got the permanent families they need and deserve. On the other end, you have the wonderful success stories. This little boy who was kind of shy, didn't always know what he was thinking. He was about 5, and the day after his adoption, he went to his speech therapy. He's running around, going into every therapist's office. He was a very shy little boy usually. And he said, "I'm not a foster kid anymore. I'm a son." And that's what every child needs and deserves, a belonging. And if we let them linger in foster care, and if we don't follow the state and federal guidelines, then we've done them a terrible disservice. The children who come to court need a chance to see what is going on. They need to know that there is a judge overseeing everything that cares about them and listens. My friend Judge Lederman in Florida said she got a letter from a little boy that said, "Judges need to listen with their heart." And then he drew a heart with 2 ears on it and gave it to her. And we need to listen to the children because that empowers them, and they begin to then build their self-confidence. This is their life, and they need to know that on every piece of paper that I sign, there's one thing at the top, and that is in the interest of you, the child. It's not anybody against anyone. And you have a voice and you're protected. You can come to court and feel safe and be heard. What a disservice it is to children to not let them know that they are the focal points of these cases, and what they do is important and it counts. And every success that we have is measured by where the child came from. There's certainly no one size fits all. There is no greater joy than seeing it work, and it does really work every now and then, and we cling to those successes. That's what keeps me going. Not only the heroes I work with every day, from the lawyers and social workers and juvenile court officers and CASAs, to the parents that pull it together, the foster parents that nurture the relationships and keep people healthy. Everyone who chooses this work is not in it for the money. And working in their presence is humbling and inspiring. And I can't emphasize enough the leadership that a judge has to take in every case to get in the driver's seat and require everyone to do what's expected of them. And if somebody drops the ball, whether it's the father or the agency worker, you need to hold them accountable. And we need to make sure that we are the captains of these cases and that we navigate these strange and complex waters. Welcome to the hardest job you'll ever love. Prepare yourself for it. Judges are woefully inadequately prepared for this work for the most part, as are lawyers, because unless you come up to this work with child development skills and knowledge of mental health, substance abuse, all of the interrelated medical, legal kinds of things that are going on, brain development, you can't understand the terrain, and so you have to educate yourself I would urge mentoring, observing. The best teaching that I ever had for a judgeship happens every time I go to another jurisdiction. If I can watch another judge doing their work, I always get wonderful ideas to steal. Picking brains of those whom you respect and are respected in the area, and being equipped for the work that you do. We need to continue our education process and reduce the caseloads for attorneys and social workers so the children can get the individual attention that they need and really be heard.
My wife, Melody, and I have been foster parents since 1991, and when I became on the board of the Iowa Foster Adoptive Parents Association, served there for about 10 years, I was president for 4 years, and then I became the president through many years of service of the National Foster Parent Association. What I always would do as a foster parent is to be proactive, and I would call the guardian ad litem and say, you know, this is the child we have in our home. You're listed as the guardian ad litem. Are you the guardian ad litem? Yes, we are. If they say, then can we set up a time to meet before the court date? Sometimes that would happen, sometimes it wouldn't, but I think, and then I think it's important for kids, depending on its age appropriate, that those children are allowed to have a voice in the system. You know, allowed to talk to the judge, to ask questions of the judge or of the system and ask, you know, what's happening and why, and help them understand how that system works for them and why a lot of times, why am I not home with my parents? As a foster parent, it's my responsibility first to treat them just like they're one of my own. And I think when they come in, they understand that from the get-go, is that you don't come to my home with any preconceived notions that you're a bad person or anything. You're treated just like my biological children. You know, you have the same requirements. You have chores to do, things that we expect of you. And I think as long as they know that going in up front, they understand that. And then just to be a role model for them, that they can see that there's a different way of life for them. Listen to the kids and do what's best for the best interest of the child. And I think we're money ahead when we do that.
I work with the Department of Human Services in Polk County. I am a case manager. I basically provide services to families to either reunify families or keep families together. I think a good thing would be have the teens meet with the judges. If not on a regular basis, maybe just once throughout their case, because I think a lot of the kids feel that the judge just see them as a case rather than an actual person. And if the judge has a chance to meet them outside of their court hearing, I think that would send a great message to the teens. I actually had an experience, I believe it was last year, one of my girls aged out. She actually aged out in shelter, and that was like the worst experience for me as far as an aging out experience. She decided that we had this perfect plan for her, but she decided the day of her birthday, the day she turned 18, that she didn't want to do it. And so we're sitting in the parking lot at 8 p.m. trying to figure out what to do with this girl before midnight on her actual birthday. And I had to literally see her get in a van with a guy that she knew nothing about and drive off. And there was nothing that I could do. And I just sat there in the parking lot and I just cried. So I really, my heart really goes out to those teens who grow up in the system and then they age out in the system and then they have nowhere to go. They have no support, and then we have to just let them go.
I am a caseworker at the Youth Law Center, and I work as part of a team with the attorneys providing services to children in the juvenile court system.
I'm an attorney at the Youth Law Center. I work with TJ. I represent children who've been abused and neglected. I got into the field of work because I wanted to practice law that I thought was going to help people, where I felt like it could really make a difference in people's lives, and this seemed like a good place for me to be. We work together as a team to fulfill the duties as guardian ad litem and attorney for that child.
It's a great opportunity because we specifically work for children, and we're the voice of the children in court, and we really work and speak to the judge and what's the best interest of the children. And it's great, you know, having the teamwork approach and somebody to bounce ideas off of and communicate and trying to make the best decision that we can.
Having a teamwork approach like we do means we provide better representation to children. We can make better recommendations about what is in a child's best interest. We can communicate maybe better with a child when we meet with them. It really enhances that relationship that we have with a client in our office. The law is black and white, or it's supposed to be black and white, and there's supposed to be just an easy answer. This is what the law says, this is what you do. But these are children's lives, and so it's not really like that, and you need to have that social work perspective to keep things in balance as we're working through a case together. Our primary responsibility is to listen to what they have to say and communicate that to the judge. They have a right to have their voice heard in court. In fact, they're the most important part about the process. That's what the case is about. They're who matter in that courtroom, and our job is to make sure that we tell the judge what they want the judge to know about how they're doing, about how they feel about where they're at, and about where they want to go. We also have a responsibility to make sure the judge knows what we think is best for them. The Youth Law Center is a unique organization in how we represent children. It's the only organization that we're aware of that pairs the social work aspect with the attorney, and I think that's critical to helping these children, and it helps us fulfill our duties as guardian ad litem, making sure that we're visiting with them and that we're talking to all the people that are involved in these kids' lives. Juvenile law, I don't think, is given the credence and the importance that it should be given. This is probably, in my opinion, it's one of the most important areas of law that you practice. We have such a significant impact on families and children's lives, and there's no other area of law like that. These kids matter, and the choices that we make and the decisions that we make and the work that we do has a huge impact on their lives, and they deserve the best work that we can give them.
All of us need to give them the respect that they deserve. I mean, their lives are turned upside down, and I don't know that any of us could imagine, you know, what they're going through, and I think that they need to have a voice and, you know, be given that and shown the respect and, you know, get calls back when they call us and, you know, be able to be at court hearings.
When you know you've made a difference in a child's life, when they're reunited with their parents and that's a happy outcome, or when they're adopted and the joy on their face for that, and when they know that they're in a safe and secure, loving home, that's what makes this job worthwhile.
I entered into the foster care system when I was 12. I was just picked up from school one day. Didn't have a chance to get any of my belongings, didn't have a chance to say goodbye to my family. I was put into a home with my younger sister. My younger brother was taken somewhere else. My older brother went to a group home. I didn't have a lot of contact with my social worker even. I don't really even know my lawyer. I don't remember ever talking to him really. It kind of seemed like I was being an inconvenience, and they didn't take the time to really talk with me beforehand, before I went into court. They didn't seem to.
And that's what you call communication with the kid right there, huh?
Really. It's kind of scary going. I didn't know what to expect, but it wasn't really anything formal. We would just go in the judge's office and
So I guess all what we heard just from them two ladies before about communicating with the kid was just a bunch of bull, huh?
It's not really very comforting to a younger kid who doesn't know what's going to happen or doesn't know what's going on anyways. I would encourage new judges and lawyers to get involved with the kids. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of effort to make a child feel like you want to get to know them. Kids are kind of thrown into foster homes sometimes. They're moved around and they're kind of jostled, and their life's kind of unstable anyway. So it's kind of nice when they feel like somebody's out there who cares about them, who wants to see them happy.
When I first entered the system, I was 11. It was awkward because I had never been to court. My attorney could probably spend more time with me right before there or after, like go over stuff that can happen in the future, and the judge could probably spend more time during the court process and stuff, describing what's going to go on. When it came to my mom having her rights terminated, I didn't want that to happen at all because I really love my mom. Now that I look at it, it kind of helped her out because now she's getting better at what she's working on. The social workers and judges that are with my case right now, they're doing everything possible to help me out and get through foster care and stuff like that. Get me going for the real life when I turn 18.
I started foster care when I was about 9 or 10. From foster care, I went to placements because I was making bad choices. The first time I went to court, it was scary because I just had come out of detention. And going in there not knowing what was going to happen, what was supposed to happen, I don't think they really know what it feels like to go through the foster care system and to go through placements and to be without your mom and to not be able to contact your family. It's hard because my dad's not around. I've seen my dad probably about 2 times out of my life, maybe 5. Even though we make bad choices, we're not bad people. And it may seem like it because of the choices we make, but just because we make them doesn't mean we're bad. And you might know what's best for us, but listen to us. Because we do know what's best for us too. We have that too. It's part of us. And to give us a chance. I've had a lot of chances, but I think I deserve one more.
I was in foster care for 10 years. My birth mom was born mentally disabled, and her family wasn't able to help her take care of me. When I was in care, I felt like it was unfair that I didn't get to go to court hearings. I didn't feel like other people should be sitting around determining what was going to happen in my life without even hearing what I had to say about it. I think when kids get to go to court hearings, they feel more informed, more involved, more stable. I think a lot of times people don't like some of the behaviors that foster kids have. Sometimes they feel like kids act out and are angry or hostile, but I think that has a lot more to do with feeling unstable. And not getting to go to court, not knowing what's going on with your case, that sort of thing, makes a child even less stable, is going to make them even more likely to act out. And I think that people should know that, and also that children, especially older children, need to have a say in what's happening in their case. No matter what decision is made for them, that child is the one who has to live with that decision for the rest of their lives. My social worker was always there for me. I'm one of the few foster kids who I know who had the same social worker for 10 years. And she gave me her home telephone number, and I could call her anytime I needed anything. And it didn't have to be anything important by adult standards. It could be something that was important to a kid. She didn't make me feel like I was a bad person or I was a brat or anything. It was just, this is important to you and I'll listen to you. And you know, that kind of speaks volumes for the way she treated me the entire 10 years that she was my social worker. The best thing that you can do for a foster child is communication. Communicating with the child, with their birth parents, with their foster parents, with the other professionals who are working on their case. It's just really important that everybody know where everybody else is coming from, and especially the child.
I entered the system when I was 10. I moved through, I believe, 4 different foster care homes and 2 residential placement facilities. I was adopted when I was 14 by 2 wonderful people. I had some experience with the court system. I had a guardian ad litem who was my main person who I talked to about anything that had to do with court. She explained things in as much as she could. I would have appreciated learning a little bit more about the system, the court system, but they didn't make that information available to me. I don't think the social workers didn't tell me much about what was going on. They would say, oh, you have court today, but they wouldn't tell me really what the process was like or anything like that. There was a lot of people in my life having a lot of say-so over what was going to happen in my life, and so that was kind of uncomfortable at times because I had to depend on what everybody else thought. I'd say definitely talk to foster care, the parents and also the children, because just talking to us lets you know so much more than you would otherwise. And we're people too, and I think that both sides need to know that we need to understand that they have a job to do, but yet they are human, and sometimes we don't get that perspective because they just seem like authority figures and we don't know anything else about them, but they have power over our lives.
I entered into the foster care system when I was young. I've been in independent living since I was 15, aged out of there when I was like 18. Being in foster care was not the best time in my life, but it wasn't the worst. Turning 18, aging out was the most hardest time in my life, and living by myself since I was 15, that was really hard too. It was a struggle because I didn't have a kid life. I had to pay bills when I was young, and it was just like really hard. Then when I turned 18, it's like it got worse. It's like, oh, you're 18. Most kids are happy. It's like, oh, you're 18. You're living in the foster care system. You have no help, and you're just getting kicked out. And if you were in a normal home, they wouldn't kick you out. If you were 18, your parents would be like, oh, if you need to stay longer, you can stay longer. So just listen to the kids like they're your own kids and not treat them like they're just furniture just to be moved around. They're kids who need love too.
Well, that's the story from the perspective of the foster children. I think that we have, I think they've made a real good presentation here, and I want to thank those participants who were on today's DVD. I think that it's good to hear from the children. This is the first time I've heard from several children. I think you got to hear from some of them, didn't you, Don?
Yes, it's interesting to listen to them from a parent's point of view.
Yes. And realizing what's happening to them in the system. I noticed there was one young man there who said he was 11 years old and he didn't want to be terminated in a parent-child relationship from his mother. One thing that they do not tell these children, and the children are not skilled in the statutes, not at age 10, that they have the right to block termination of parental rights at the age of 10. So if you're one of those kind of kids and you need to look into that you don't have to be parted from your parents. Any comment there, Terrance, from what you're viewing of this foster care DVD?
Well, I thought it was interesting. I don't know if it was a PR DVD that they're putting out or what, but I think that a lot of what they were saying, a lot of the officials were saying in the beginning of the tape was more or less so disputed by the kids at the end of the tape. So I
Right,
thought that was kind
right.
of a weird. Is this a PR piece? The PR is not working when it gets to the end, because the kids are talking about, well, I didn't know what the process was. I would have liked to know, and I didn't really get to talk to anybody. I think there was one exception. The one lady said that she did get a home phone number from her social care worker and stayed in contact with her for the entire 10 years that she was in placement. So I thought that was notable. But I mean, and you got 6 other examples, and they're all
Right.
stating the opposite. I mean, something is amiss. Something's not working out. So
It's good when we can get that information straight from the horse's mouth, isn't it?
Yeah.
The people who are directly involved in foster care. And I don't know who is more directly involved in foster care than the foster care children. They get the worst of the whole scene that's going on. Well, there are a couple of numbers here that may be of interest to you. Vocal Iowa at mchsi.com is how you can get a hold of us through email. And there's a couple of telephone numbers that may be helpful to you. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next